Now don't be fooled by this photo, because this story is called The Demon Dog. For the short term they knew him, they called him Shanks. So if you haven't guessed it yet, Shanks is an American pit bull. But ever since Mark found Shanks, there was just something off. See, Shanks was fit, tough, and a very strong looking dog. But when you looked into his eyes, there was something evil that wanted to get out. But Shanks was a stray. He was found covered in blood months ago. The vet said that it was blood from a carcass or something that he had eaten to try and survive. But after we saw Shanks attack Robin Warmont while she was hanging out her washing, we knew it wasn't for survival. You see, Robin was 8 months pregnant when Shanks hunted her down and attacked her. Police said that they couldn't even recognise her once he'd finished ripping her apart. And unfortunately, neither her or her unborn baby survived. Since he ran away that day, 3 of his past owners have stepped forward, all with gruesome stories about Shanks. And all have refused to describe to police what he looks like, because he still stalks them. Don't ever buy a house like this, even if it's a bargain. In 2004, a young family moved into the house they just bought for their family of 6. The house was huge with 12 bedrooms, but in the whole house, 1 room was locked. And a condition of sale from the real estate agent was they were to never open that door. Although concerned, it was a bargain they just couldn't pass up. But after the first few nights of moving in, the regret of the sale was realised. In the middle of the night, they woke up to something running through the wall. The sound was like banging, like someone was dragging something, but from inside the wall. The sound continued for hours as the father tried to figure out where it was coming from. The next day, the father found a secret door in the cellar. It led to another room, but it was locked. Night fell on them quickly though, so they all had to go back to their bedrooms. When all of a sudden there was a scream from one of his daughter's rooms. He ran into his daughter's room and found something dragging her in the closet. He quickly got an axe and went to the locked room and smashed open the door, only to find the real estate agent with a butcher's outfit, his daughter on a chopping table, and both her arms and legs missing. She was screaming, "Help me, Dad." This is a school excursion you do not want to go on. She was that one kid that cut her arm, most of the time dressed emo, and just seemed to hate life itself. But during their school excursion to Pearl Harbor, she was the only one left to blame. You see, every class had to stay together, which was easy because they all had different wristbands. 5B's was red, which given what happened to them was pretty fitting. As the class entered the dark hallway leading to the underwater exhibition, they were guided and instructed by their audio headpieces, which on the day everyone in the class was wearing, except Kelly May. Now it's still not clear which door they exited or why, but the next day the whole class of 5B were found drowned and laying at the bottom of the shipwreck. All 28 of them without a noise, a splash or a cry for help. The only survivor of 5B was Kelly May, which still to this day she's not told police why 5B entered that door, or why she thinks they went missing without a sound. And today she resides in one of Hawaii's mental asylums. Now this message is pretty simple. Don't record yourself sleeping in the dark of night if you're not willing to know what's in it. In 2007, a woman in Richmond, Virginia was having trouble sleeping. She'd wake up in the morning feeling like she'd run a race. She finally saw a doctor who suggested that she record herself sleeping at night and send the videos through to him. So for the first few nights she does this and just sends the videos off to the doctor. But 2 nights later she's suddenly woken with this massive knock at the door. Police lights filling the night sky. She rushes to the front door and opens it. 2 cops come barging past her with their guns drawn straight into the bedroom. The woman's terrified by this, but not as terrified as what the officers later tell her. See, in the few nights of recording that the doctor watched, a man entered her bedroom through the window. He injected her with a needle, then raped her. But in the last night's video before he left, he put a massive knife to her throat and said, "Tomorrow night's your last, I'm gonna gut you like a pig." After that night with all the police, the man never returned. But what's scary is they never found the man either. Now this is one house you do not want to break into. In 2012, a Melbourne family wakes to the sound of someone breaking in the back door. The homeowner walks down the hallway and sure enough sees someone trying to break in. When the intruder sees the homeowner, he turns and runs. The intruder runs down the side passage and just leaps the fence, runs up the road and disappears into a park. The homeowner's got no chance of catching this guy. So the next day, the homeowner goes to the local hardware and he levels the playing field. He laces the inside of the fence with layers of barbed wire. Sure enough, only 2 nights later, screams echo the night. The homeowner's prepared this time, pulls out a box from underneath his bed and takes a needle. He heads straight to the side gate and finds the intruder again, tangled and ripped apart in barbed wire. and simply injects the intruder. The next day, the intruder wakes in the homeowner's garage. He's dizzy, his hands are bound, and both of his feet are set in quickset concrete. As tears run down his eyes and the garage door opens, he sees the homeowner grinning with bolt cutters. This is why parents should always believe their kids. In 2010, a woman arrives home from work only to notice that the entrance to the attic is open. She didn't think too much of it though, because that morning at breakfast, her 15-year-old son had said he was going to go up to get a book to take to his school camp for the week. With her husband also travelling for work, she closes the attic door and slides the lock across to make herself feel better. On the kitchen counter, there's a note from her son. It says, "Hey mum, have a great week. I'll see you when I get home. Love, Dan." P.S. I heard that knocking in the attic again I told you about, so maybe get Dad to check the water heater when he gets home. A few nights later, she has a dream of water dripping on her face. She suddenly wakes, turns on the nightstand light, and notices she's covered in blood. In a panic, she checks herself to make sure she's not hurt, but looks up and sees blood dripping through the ceiling. She calls police, and when they arrive, they go up into the attic. They find a mad, deranged man living up there. They also find her 15-year-old son's body slumped over the master bedroom. He still had his backpack on and was holding a book. He was half eaten. Holy shit! This is based off a true story that actually happened to me yesterday. So I took my kids to the go-kart track with some of their friends. As we were lining up to get our helmets, an old man started to talk to me. He looked right out of place and didn't really look like he was there for go-karting. Not to mention he had a creepy eye. But he was nice enough all the same. He told me his kids were really excited to go go-karting. And I told him my kids were too. There was a bit of an awkward silence between us, and then he looked at me and said, "Be careful of turn 3, it's a killer." I was like, ha ha ha, okay, and just moved up the line. As I go to the front of the line and look back, he's gone. We hand our tickets to the man at the gate. He goes to let us in, but suddenly stops us. He'd stopped us because he was questioning my son because he was wearing one of his motocross helmets. So he asked us to step aside and he let the kids behind us through to take our spot. Disappointed, we watched them take off, only to see the first kid smash badly in turn 3. He got out of the car and was laying on the ground. We could see his visor full of blood. He was dead. One of the workers said a man's kids died there 30 years ago on turn 3. In 2005, Dylan Bryan had started filming himself while he slept. He's done this now every night for the last 6 months. Yeah, it seems like a real weird thing to do, but for Dylan, he needs to do it to prove to himself he's not who he thinks he could be. See, it all started for Dylan in 1992 when he was at school camp. On the second night, 2 kids were murdered in their sleep. But police pinned it on a guy that was in the woods that night. He'd been out of jail and was on parole. But no more than a year later, when he was at his year 10 camp, one of the teachers burnt to death in her cabin while she slept. Dylan started to think to himself that bad luck was following him. But Dylan was a champion wrestler and ended up going overseas with the wrestling team. During a sports competition in Paris, you guessed it, 3 people in his hotel were smothered to death during the night. Everyone was horrified, but Dylan noticed some scratches on his arm he couldn't explain. But he's married now and with a kid, but very confused that every night on the cameras he watches himself trying to break into his daughter's bedroom. He's just thankful he locks her bedroom door every night and gives the key to the neighbour. Would you stay home if your young daughter told you this? Just wait to the end. So it was no more than a week later that they had moved into a different family home that it happened. Annie had told her dad from the minute they moved into the house she didn't want to be there and she wanted to move again. To make her feel better, her parents had moved her bedroom twice already in the first week, but she still wasn't comfortable. It was during breakfast that morning that Annie's dad found cuts all up and down Annie's arms. He grabbed her arm and said, "What the hell have you been doing, Annie?" His little girl burst out crying. She said, "I keep telling you, Dad, we need to move, but you don't listen. The woman who lives here says she knows what you've done, Dad, and she's going to kill you. Every night she's come to get you, I stop her, and she scratches and cuts me. But I'm so tired, Dad. And she told me when Mummy and I leave the house this morning that no one will be here to stop her from killing you this time." Mary was a 5-year-old twin. She just loved playing with her twin sister. They'd just play with their dolls in the dollhouse every day. But the year Mary turned 6, her parents sat her down and said, "It's time we finally told you." They told her that she was a twin, but her twin sister died at birth, and she no longer existed. Mary, frustrated, went straight to her wardrobe, opened it, and said, "Well, who's this then?" She opened the wardrobe door only to see another Mary standing there looking straight at her. Her mum giggled and said, "Sweetie, that's your reflection in the mirror." Mary slowly closed the wardrobe door, and the little girl in the mirror stepped forward and said, "Shh." Don't tell them. They just won't understand.